Former Taipei Mayor Wen-je has been granted bail set at $2 million after a year in detention on corruption charges. US and Taiwan defense officials forge closer ties at a closed-door meeting in Alaska, while China's military rise looms in the backdrop. Ukraine's allies draft post-war security guarantees for Kyiv, while fighting with Russia goes on.
Базова рамка є. Також розуміємо, що гарантії безпеки – це не про майбутнє колись, це про ситуацію і зараз теж.
Plus,
one animal species is at the heart of a debate of whether they should be kept as pets. We take a close look at what's behind this controversy.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Laurel Stewart. We begin today with a high-profile legal case here in Taiwan. Taiwan People's Party founder Wen-je has been offered bail after spending a year in detention. That bail is set at over $2 million. But according to Ke's lawyers, he is still considering whether to accept it. Our reporter Tiffany Wong has been following his trial since his first detention last year and joins us now live from outside the Taipei District Court. Tiffany, what's the latest on this case?
Hi, Laurel. So just this afternoon, the Taipei District Court granted a $2 million bail to Wen-je, who has now been in detention for a year, facing trials for corruption and embezzlement charges. Now, Ke's supporters have been eagerly awaiting his release, but we had just learned from Ke's lawyers that he is still seriously considering whether to accept the bail, and some reports say that he may not want to borrow money to pay off this hefty fee. For the past few days, Ke has been in court for cross-examination, and that's the first time that the public saw him in a while. He gave an emotional testimony, even crying as he pleaded for release during this trial. Now, throughout this year-long investigation, Ke has been held incommunicado, meaning that he cannot talk with anyone involved in the case. And he was released very briefly last December on bail. But then, just a week later, prosecutors successfully appealed to have him re-detained. Now, even if Ke accepts the bail and is released this time, it still comes with conditions. He won't be able to leave the country, he will not be able to talk with others involved, and he'll have to wear an electronic ankle monitor. And of course, there is always the chance that prosecutors could appeal once again for his detention.
So why has this trial gotten so much attention here in Taiwan?
Well, Ke is a well-known political figure here in Taiwan. Ever since 2019, when he founded the Taiwan People's Party, that's a third party here, he managed to, gain so much momentum that he even launched a pretty competitive campaign in 2024 for the presidency. He received 25% of votes. Just less than a year later, he found himself at the middle of these trials. The first into whether he accepted bribes for a construction project while he was Taipei City Mayor, and another for misusing campaign funds during his run for the presidency. Altogether, if he's found guilty on all counts, he could face up to 28 years in jail. Now, his supporters in the TPP and the other major opposition party, the Kuomintang, have called this trial judicial persecution. And the KMT chair today said that while Ke's bail is a positive thing, that the trial shouldn't have gone on for so long. Throughout the past year, the TPP has, of course, been standing staunchly behind Ke, and just a week ago, they even held a rally calling for his release. But that rally ran into clashes with the police, and now the party's new chair, Huang Guochang, is under investigation for that. Now, as more of Ke's supporters rally behind him, it's clear that people want answers about this investigation, and many still want to see him come home.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was Tiffany Wong live outside the Taipei District Court. Taiwan's top official in charge of cross-strait affairs is set to visit the US. Mainland Affairs Council Minister Chiu Zhuizheng will meet with US officials, lawmakers, and overseas Taiwanese communities to outline Taipei's cross-strait policies. He'll also give a speech at the Heritage Foundation think tank. The visit comes after a discreet meeting in Alaska between US and Taiwanese defense officials, viewed as a sign of growing cooperation. That under-wraps meeting between US and Taiwan defense officials in Alaska last week comes as China steps up its alliances to counter US hegemony. Alan Liu reports.
US and Taiwan defense officials met quietly in Alaska last week. The meeting came just days before China's military parade and months after a higher-level meeting in the US was canceled, allegedly due to US-China trade talks. The Financial Times reports that Jed Royal, the Pentagon's top Indo-Pacific official, met in Anchorage with Xi Zijian, then Taiwan's Deputy National Security Advisor. Xi last week was elevated to a more senior role working with Taiwan's National Security Advisor. He is viewed as the leading contender to become Taiwan's next ambassador to Washington. One legislator says regular communication benefits both sides.
不管是在台美之间的贸易上面也好，或者是很多重要的国安议题，随时保持这个管道的畅通，那针对这些众多的议题来进行意见的交换，都是非常自然的事情。
At the same time, Taiwan's proposed 2026 defense budgets reveals a breakthrough in military dialogue with the U.S. Taiwan and the U.S. currently hold annual monetary talks, defense review talks, and a political and military dialogue. But it will now be adding a new defense policy project meeting as the top platform for bilateral defense issues. Taiwan's defense ministry plans to send a delegation of up to 32 officials to the U.S. to attend.
当明年开始，这个会议如果真的成型，而且变成一个制度化的会议的话，它会变成年度中华民国国防部跟美国国防部之间一次最高阶的这种会谈。
Defense analysts say the new meeting is meant to clarify how the U.S. and Taiwan would act in scenarios such as a Chinese invasion or blockade, and to coordinate responses so U.S. support is more effective. Some say holding the meeting in Alaska was a way to keep things low-key, especially after reports that Taiwan's Defense Minister Wellington Koo had to cancel a U.S. visit back in June. The meeting also came as Taiwan gets ready to review its next year's defense budget, which sets aside more than 3% of GDP. Ryan Wu and Ellen Liu in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
A senior US defense lawmaker is urging the Pentagon to take concrete action to address the arms sales backlog to Taiwan.
And they can go to the manufacturers and go, by the way, we understand this is the order that you have taken these orders, but we are going to ask that you elevate fulfilling the order to Taiwan and others, because it is strategically very important to make sure that you all have the capability. And it's not going to do any good if the order's filled after China makes a move on Taiwan. That's after the fact.
Rob Whitman made the remarks after China showed off some of its most advanced weapons in a military parade commemorating the end of World War II. The US lawmaker also urged Washington to speed up technology transfers to Taiwan, saying it would help the island country produce expendable weapons, something he says would be crucial if China tried to impose a blockade. Former Kuomintang chair Hong Xiuzhu has met with China's top political advisor Wang Huning after attending a controversial military parade in Beijing. Hong called the parade, which marked the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, a source of pride, saying it showed China's commitment to peace and resistance to foreign aggression. Wang praised the Taiwanese representatives for what he called their opposition to independence. But here in Taipei, Hong's visit has stirred controversy, and lawmakers from across party lines have criticized the trip. The Mainland Affairs Council, which manages relations with China, has called the trip deeply regrettable, but it also said Hong likely did not break any rules. Beijing says Pyongyang fully supports China's position on Taiwan after Chinese President Xi Jinping met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. It was their first direct meeting in 6 years. Kim was in Beijing alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin and other leaders for a massive military spectacle commemorating 80 years since the end of World War II. Chinese state media say Xi wants stronger coordination with North Korea in regional and global affairs, calling the two countries, quote, good neighbors and good friends. A coalition of Ukraine's allies is drafting security guarantees for Kyiv once Russia's war with Ukraine ends. France's president is optimistic these guarantees will soon gain US backing. But talk of what happens after the war is all hypothetical for now, as fighting between Russia and Ukraine continues. John Van Trieste reports.
French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky take their leave at the Élysée Presidential Palace in Paris. It's been a busy day. Inside, around 24 Ukrainian allies, the so-called Coalition of the Willing, have started working out security guarantees for Ukraine to make sure once any peace with Russia comes, Moscow will think twice about attacking again. Each country is exploring what role it will play, and details like how many allied troops might patrol in Ukraine are still under wraps. Zelensky says allies especially need to focus on boosting their weapons production. But he says, in the end, Ukraine will still be largely responsible for its own defense.
Базова рамка є. Також розуміємо, що гарантії безпеки – це не про майбутнє колись, це про ситуацію і зараз теж. Сильна українська армія є і буде центральним елементом гарантій безпеки. Відповідно, це можливості нашої армії, це і зброя, і фінансування, і тренування, і виробництво зброї. Все це забезпечуємо.
One key player absent from Thursday's talks was U.S. President Donald Trump, who has repeatedly said he wants to end the Russia-Ukraine war, but has avoided calling for a ceasefire or adding tough new economic measures on Moscow. But France's Macron is optimistic. He says the U.S. will join in new sanctions against Russia if it keeps refusing peace talks. He also says the U.S. should soon be on board with the security guarantees.
L'Ukraine. Et nous avons ensuite tenu un appel avec le président Trump, où nous avons pu établir tout cela. Les conclusions de cet appel sont simples. Dans les prochains jours, nous allons finaliser le soutien américain à ces garanties de sécurité. Les États-Unis, comme je l'ai dit, ont été impliqués dans toutes les étapes du processus.
Trump has had a phone call with Zelensky and says he will talk to Russian President Vladimir Putin soon. But Trump wants something too. While most of Europe stopped imports of Russian fuel in 2023, a White House official says Europe sent Russia 1.1 billion euros for fuel in 1 year. And Trump says it's time for Europe to finally wean itself off Russian energy. The meeting of European leaders comes just days after Putin stood on stage with other world leaders in Beijing, showing the Ukraine war hasn't left him as isolated as Ukraine's allies might like.
It's very interesting, this coalition of the willing meetings taking place in Paris today. Macron and Zelensky in those images of showing fraternal support to Zelensky at his time of trouble. And the same week we've seen Vladimir Putin speaking to Narendra Modi and to Xi Jinping and then attending a military parade with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. And that's a reflection of Russia's diplomatic alliances.
Far from Washington and Paris, though, the war in Ukraine grinds on. Ukraine's emergency services released this footage showing firefighters battling the flames left after a Russian drone attack on the city of Odessa Wednesday evening. On the ground, talk of post-war security guarantees seems far off, as even peace talks remain elusive. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
US President Donald Trump has repeated his threat of tariffs on chip companies that are not planning to invest in US production.
We'll be putting a fairly substantial tariff on, not that high, but fairly substantial tariff, with the understanding that if they come into the country, if they're coming in, building, planning to come in, there will not be a tariff.
Trump was speaking at a dinner with tech company CEOs. The US president said back in August that he would impose 100% tariffs on semiconductor imports. His latest remarks make that tariff rate unclear. Major chip manufacturers like Taiwan's TSMC, along with others like South Korea's Samsung and SK Hynix, have all announced investments in the US. Trump has signed an order implementing the tariff agreement between Washington and Tokyo. That deal sets a 15% base levy on nearly all Japanese imports to the US, including vehicles and components, and goes into effect next week. This base tariff rate will not stack with existing tariffs. The order also says Japan would expand market access to American agricultural products, including rice and soybeans. But Tokyo says it won't sacrifice Japanese farmers as part of the agreement, as Japan is experiencing a rice shortage. Tokyo has also promised to invest $550 billion in the US. Animal rights groups want to ban meerkats as pets here in Taiwan, following new rules from the country's Animal Welfare Department that would require owners of some exotic animals to register them. Sandy Chi reports.
Meet meerkat Cui Hua. He's an important member of the family for Chen Yiwen, who has been caring for him for about a year, showering him with his buddy Cui Yu with endless hugs, scrubs, and snacks.
当初会想养狐獴，是因为想说，因为自己本身就在养爬虫，然后他们的食性很像，都是吃虫的。然后想说，因为毕竟爬虫类真的跟人的互动比较少，想说，毕竟它是哺乳类，你看这么可爱。
Chen made this decision after months of research to better understand the species.
一开始我也想说，就一只毛茸茸的小动物，应该可能跟猫狗，他们都说跟猫狗很像啊，但其实养起来根本完全不一样。对，因为你说它像狗一样黏人没有错，但它的食性又比较像猫，它偏肉食，它其实偏肉，但准确来说它是吃虫，大过于吃肉。
But not everyone believes meerkats are suitable pets. In September, animal rights groups in Taiwan issued a statement urging the government to ban keeping meerkats as pets. The call came after authorities placed the animals on a grey list in August, meaning they could be legally owned once regulations on breeding, sales, and ownership are established.
它的自然栖地是在非洲南部，就是草原、大草原跟沙漠的这样的一种自然栖地环境。那他们过去，因为他们模样很可爱，眼睛很大，然后很小，所以人们就觉得说它似乎很好饲养。那所以它就在宠物市场里面就开始流行起来。可是我们来看，就是说它基本上，它纵使被带进来人为饲养的环境里头，它还是存有它野生动物的非常非常多习性。比方说，这个动物它很重要的是，它是具有高度社群的一个动物，所以它们大概在野外，它们大概都是以25到30只以上一个这样的族群为一个单位。
The groups warn the animals could harm local ecosystems, similar to how green iguanas have been devastating southern Taiwan after being introduced as pets here in the early 2000s. With many concerns over this exotic pet species, the group suggests the government pursue a phased ban, with registration and oversight for current owners, stronger quarantine controls, and long-term public education. There are currently over 1,000 known pet meerkats in Taiwan.
Meerkats are just one of the many exotic pets here in Taiwan. And with rising awareness for animal rights, the government will continue to hammer out new rules to find the best solution for these animals and their humans. Luffy Lee, PG Zhuang, and Sandy Chi in Ilan for TaiwanPlus.
What is it like to revive a language and bridge cultures with translation? Our feature-length interview show, Zoom In, Zoom Out, recently caught up with Naomi Sím, an author who does just that in Tâigael. Sím is a contributing author in Tâigael, a collection of stories reviving mother languages from Taiwan and Scotland.
So one of the special things about this book is that it involves each piece of writing is translated into 4 different languages: English, Mandarin, Taiwanese, Tâigael, and also Gaelic, Scottish. How did it feel seeing your writing written in all these different languages?
I find it very interesting when I read my English version of story, and the special thing that I found is English needed to be very specific. For example, in my original text, I wrote about 2 old men playing chess in front of the temple under a big tree. So in my mind, I picture a big banyan tree and 2 old men playing Chinese chess. But when I read the English version, the picture that came to my mind is actually maybe a big oak tree, and then two old men playing Western chess. So I asked the translator to elaborate that it's a banyan tree.
And as part of this project, you were also helping with the translating of the stories from Gaelic and English into Mandarin and Tâigael, right? There's a collaborative project from a number of writers. What did you learn about translating?
Translation is like a bridge between two cultures. And to be honest, before this project, I hardly have any knowledge about Scotland, except for it's very famous for whiskey. Through the translation work, I learned a lot of how the Scottish culture is like, from the snowy environment, which I've never experienced in Taiwan, and how broad the landscape could be just inside the story. To be honest, I didn't pick up any Gaelic, but I see my novel translated into Gaelic with the special spacing and the word shape, which I've never seen before. It's like very mysterious, like a spell, magic. Also, I can feel the rhythm of the language through the gaps in between words. And I think that's just really, it's hard to explain, but I feel very excited to see this happen.
This book is going to be read here and probably in Scotland as well when it's been published. It's got Gaelic in it, but also could be read all around the world. What do you hope that readers around the world get from reading your story in all these different languages?
I hope the audience can start to think about their mother tongue, could be perhaps collaborate with other cultures, and maybe start speaking their mother tongues again. And through this book, I would like the readers to know that any kind of language is worth written down and passed down.
That was Naomi Sím, translator and contributing author to Tâigael. You can watch the full episode on Zoom In, Zoom Out at TaiwanPlus.com. Taiwan is a thriving centre for the export of orchid flowers. John Van Trieste takes a look at the country's orchid industry and how it got so big.
Taiwan is one of the world's leading exporters of orchid flowers. In greenhouses like this one, flowers destined for markets around the world grow under careful heat, humidity, and lighting conditions. When ready, these flowers are snipped off, packaged, and readied for shipment. For the last 2 to 3 decades, Taiwan has invested heavily in seed sources, tissue culture, and production technologies. In 2023, orchid exports brought in close to $200 million. One reason these flowers sell so well is that they're hardy.
切花就是把这丛的花夹掉了，伊就是顶悬安尼尔，伊无摘啊出去，伊纯粹就是这枝花出口安尼尔。乌蝶兰的切花，伊唔是单咱买倒来插哩，伊种内底有伊的寿命足长了。另外一个就是伊的运输，伊嘛会当忍耐一个足长的时间。所以咱种乌蝶兰的切花嘛是咱台湾离乌蝶这个部分的明日之星。
Around 80 countries buy these flowers, but along with Japan, it is the United States that's become the chief market and the chief reason for the industry's rise. Before 2008, the U.S. market was tough to crack due to strict biosecurity rules.
进前要去销去美国，足麻烦的。你着爱把兰花种伫迄落水草内底，你来水草摕掉，爱再吹好干，各方面的，爱2-3工，才可以来用控温送去美国。 咱若法度直接榨水草，加迄盆啊，送去美国，你足方便的。
But 2004 was the year that restrictions changed. Taiwan became the only country permitted to send moss and pots to the U.S. along with the flowers. It's certainly still not easy to sell abroad. Greenhouses must still be up to strict U.S. standards. And shipments have to be totally free of bugs, ferns, or other foreign materials. Still, the easing of rules in 2004 saw orchid exports to the U.S. jump fivefold in the decade that followed. One reason for Taiwanese orchid success is technical and painstaking. Breeders clone the best flowers. In some cases, they can squeeze about 800 to 1,000 identical copies of the exact flower customers want, about as far as you can go without getting mutations that customers do not want. As growers will tell you, it all requires a lot of patience.
组织培养要3-4年，所以我们的时间很长啊。要大量生产的时候要3年到4年，所以一颗花它能够到市场的话，至少要经过7年的历练。
Taiwan's orchids do have competition. Growers are impressed with Dutch products, and China's orchid industry, while still some years behind Taiwan, is also catching up. There's also the issue of U.S. tariffs and what they'll mean for the industry. But growers in Taiwan have grown used to working with the government and research institutions, and they're confident that with enough support, Taiwan will remain the orchid kingdom. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more of our stories. Finally today, let's take a look at some of our colleagues here at TaiwanPlus marking the Ghost Festival, Zhongyuan Pudu. They're offering food and burning incense and joss money to feed wandering spirits. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.